So today's session is not going to be like the typical session where I kind of endorse about a product. It is all about my experience in open source, how I kind of dwelled into the IT world and I started moving on to the open source world and how I started building the community, mentoring, and also learned about migrating people from one tech stack to a different tech stack. And it's not about you stick to one technology and you are like stuck to it for a decade. As and when the customer needs increases, as and when the requirement increases, the technology changes, you have to keep yourself adapted to new technologies and keep yourself wide open. All right. So I'm Kamal. I'm sure Saurabh might have introduced me. So I'm a developer advocate and a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart and an open source contributor, community builder, and a YouTuber also. So as I mentioned, my essence of this session is more to emphasize how the evolution of open source community process, importance of adopting open source is important and ways you can contribute to open source. So it's all about open source. So you have any questions related to it, where to start, how to start, what to start with, all your answers would be kind of addressed here. So before I start, did you know that companies have started adopting open source as one of the rescue operations? So way back, like I would say a decade back, we had companies asking, are you good at Java skill? Are you good at Android? How many years of experience do you have working on cloud and other technologies like C++? But you know what nowadays companies look for? Can I get your GitHub profile? Have you contributed to open source libraries? What is your open source contributions? Have you built any community? Or are you a part of a community? So these are the kind of skills that the company is looking for, and the policies have completely changed. And this is becoming one of the mandatory skills. Now that kinds of gives you a pinch that companies are adopting open source. All right. So, and you could see that 44% of the organizations are doing it. So give a try, just give an interview to a company and you can actually observe that so many companies are actually looking for open source experience. So before I dwell into open source, talk about open source or what are the tech stacks that I'm working on, I always have this habit of looking as to when it really started. Is it that when I started open source, learning open source, is it like a few years back it started? No, it started way back in 1950. In 1950 and 1960, we had software and compilers, which was like delivered as part of hardware purchase without separate fees. So in 1970, we had IBM. These all were open source actually, but we were not aware of it or we were not including it in our day-to-day life. In 1980, Richard kind of launched the GNU project. And in 1990, we had the first version of Linux introduced, Mozilla was started, and the open source GNU project also was started. And in 2000, we had a lot of companies kind of welcomed open source, like the Apache was developed and maintained by an open source community. MySQL, PHP was installed on more than 2,400 million websites with more than 2.1 million web servers. So you could see that the rapid increase with the internet, how much open source kind of was adopted in the market. And then the list never stops. We have WordPress, VLC Player, Notepad++. These all are open source actually. Ubuntu, Android. That's how you try to give your hands dirty or try to work on it and see how it works, right? So Android, Flutter, Fuchsia, HarmonyOS. So the list keeps on going. So today I might have one tech stack, tomorrow it will be something else, but everything is converting into open source, right? So if you ask me when did it really started, it was way back in 1950. So working in an enterprise system like enterprise corporations or very closed projects where it is completely licensed and I have a lot of restrictions, it was absolutely fine with me when I was working a decade back into the IT industries. But I always felt that there is some kind of constraint that I'm kind of stuck, that I'm not flexible enough to get my creativity side out. Because even though I have something innovative, I couldn't do anything because it was completely a closed project. So if I had to do it, it used to be a very long process. So licensing was there, pricing factor was there. So this all makes it kind of pulls me back, and I did not have that freedom to expose my creative side. But hands down, now we have open source. You don't have any restrictions. You find a project, you feel something is really not right in that project, you find a bug, you find some kind of a feature, improvement, anything, or an idea, you can just let the team know about it and start working on it. That is how open source gives us that flexibility. And I also see this preconceived notion that everybody thinks open source is free. No, according to me, and it's my personal experience, open source or the free factor is about the freedom and not the terms of prices that I'm talking about. So you have the freedom to explore things, work on it, and see what creative side of yours can be portrayed. And according to my opinion, open source is all about these three factors: creativity, community, and flexibility. That is, letting your creativity side out and being flexible enough and allowing us to perform or tweak any changes. Because if there is restriction, that means it's not open source. It's not for the community. You don't have that freedom to do. But open source is all about that, right? So it's flexible enough, and it also allows us to tweak or make any changes. And in turn, what are you doing? You're kind of building the community, right? And this awesome community. So which I think which lags in the closed system or an enterprise system. So at the end of the day, an open source community kind of revolves around these three aspects, which is the flexibility, community, and creativity. So if you ask me, Kamal, where shall I start? What do I do? What do I do next? I know you kind of got a pinch of what open source is and how companies are adopting, right? So first I would suggest is simple. If you're very new, if you haven't tried anything, look for the most popular projects on GitHub. And when you're looking for projects, just don't randomly look for projects which is like booming or something. Look for projects of your type. Whether are you into a security module or a virtual reality person, or are you into a simple text editor kind of a person where you work on it? See what are your interests and then pick a topic and then look for the volume. Do not pick complex projects. Start from something that's labeled as like the beginner, first time users, and then start with it. And then get a taste of it. Play around with it. See how other peoples are kind of working on the open source issues or projects, or what is their experience or what is their take on it. And then slowly get into it. According to me, open source is not all about fixing or working on a code. It could be documentation, because that's the front face of your project, right? If you look at the README project in a GitHub project, you could see that just by reading that, I'll understand what this project is. I don't have to dwell deep into it, right? So if you're really good at writing a README, that is itself an open source contribution. If you're good at designing part, you could open source, you can kind of contribute. If you feel that the existing project on a GitHub or a Bitbucket has a feature, say for example, you're working with a software, particular IDE, and you feel that one feature is kind of not free, it's quite expensive, and you can think that this particular feature, I can make it open source and give it to the audience and free to that itself is an open source project. And also you need to understand how much time you need to take, because don't just jump into working on open source project. Understand what's your genre or what is your type of project you like to work on, the volume of the project, the time that you will be working on, because you're not going to spend months together on fixing an issue, right? You need to set a timeline and then understand what is the potential of using this project. Is it going to help me in my career? Is it going to help me with what I'm going to do in future? What are the problems it's going to solve? And many companies kind of use free tools, right? So you can develop any of these plugins or free tools or anything as such. Okay, moving on. So after I did a lot of research on open source and I kind of gained experience working on a lot of things, my first journey was into Flutter, where that's how I started my journey in Flutter. I started my own YouTube channel and it was free open. Now, there are a lot of people in the audience who are new to Flutter, or they might have tried out Flutter, right? So if you're new or if you're experienced or you're working on it, just a quick refresh. Flutter is this Google's UI toolkit for building beautiful natively compiled applications. Let me repeat that. It's going to build these natively compiled applications for mobile, web, desktop, and embedded device from a single code base. Yes, you heard me. All these platforms and devices are covered with a single code base. So if you really want to dwell into Flutter, how is that a single code base I'm able to run on all this? That's the beauty of the architecture and the framework. So you have to get into it or understand how from a single code base I'm able to run my app on all these devices without any major changes. And Dart is the programming language that is used by Flutter. So if you're from any background, you have a bit of OOPS concept knowledge or C++, you're good to go to learn Dart, and you can give a try with Flutter. So if you see, Flutter is all about free open source community kind of an platform. These are built by developers like you and me. So if it was not thought that, okay, if it was not open source, who would have built this? This would have been a pricey factor for me. If I had to enable in my project something with the navigation that you see the heart first, second, third, I had to praise something. I had to give a pricing factor for it. But since a developer thought this is open source, let me build something that could be used in my project and also used by many of them. And this, if I have to do the same thing, you know how much I'm going to take? I'm going to take at least 3 to 4 days to accomplish this effect. So with developers like you building the community, they created it. It's open source now. You can also see how it was built, and I can start building it. That is how easy Flutter is, and open source community plays that important role and that flexibility factor here. So it's these are a couple of simple examples in open source from Flutter. Next, we have something called Dartpad. It is an online editor that is also kind of open source, built by developers like you and me and the Google employees. They thought that, okay, if someone wants to really try Flutter, I don't have to get into the IDE, download, do all that factor. Open Dartpad on the browser and you're good to go. You can see all these examples were created, and you can see even the code that is being built and how it is being built. So that is how easy Dartpad is, and that's open source and again free. So why I keep emphasizing this factor of free and open source is they've made the entire Flutter ecosystem based on it, so that it's for the developer by the developer. And you're free to explore anything, build anything to your customers, because at the end of the day, you want to delight your customer, client, projects, your ideas, your startup, whatever it is, right? So if I have everything closed, pricey factor, licensed, where would I have that creativity to explore it, right? So that's why I'm kind of emphasizing all these factors. And we also have these features built by developers like you and me, which is one is the calendar feature, where if you have to select a range of dates, and the middle one being the pan and zoom factor, where I want, this was like a kind of a game that you could do, but similarly I can use an image and zoom it. So that is the creativity side which you can think of. And we also had few other improvements and releases happening. And another reason why I keep telling all this is we have releases happening very frequently in Flutter. It's happening so frequently that it's just not they're fixing some bugs. Whatever request we get from the developer community or developers like you and me asking, okay, can I get these features fixed because my client is looking for something like this? We have teams working and getting it updated. So this was not intended by the team to do it. These all are requests raised by the community, and these are getting fixed at the fast rate. So you can see how many thousands of pull requests getting closed every week or month, because it's all developers' request. So Flutter has been kind of rated as the most popular cross-platform mobile framework in 2021 October by the Statista charts, and it's been expected that in 2023, like more than 24 million softwares developers worldwide, they're going to be growing and expected to be growing in Flutter. And we have almost 90,000 Flutter apps on Google Play Store. So you can see that how Flutter is growing and adopted by everybody. And we also have 50,000 in the line to be pushed to the Google Play Store. And here I have something very important to say. If you haven't heard about Fuchsia, I don't blame you, because I know it's the new operating system which has been developed by Google, and it has been developing since 2016. And it is designed from the ground for security and updatability. Well, guess why am I talking about Fuchsia? Kamal, why are you talking here about Fuchsia? We don't have anything to do with Fuchsia here. So why am I talking is Fuchsia is integrating this new operating system. And guess what? Flutter is the one inside it. So Flutter is the base of it. So when Flutter is ready for release, it will be a head start if you're already building on Flutter. So you would be good to go to work on Fuchsia. And it's that one operating system which covers all your devices. So with Flutter support for the web, more and more apps will be available right from the browser. So that is the latest update that we have about Fuchsia, and you in coming up months you can look for more updates on this Fuchsia part. So if you ask me what is your primary purpose of using Flutter, so you can see that almost 60 to 40% from 2020 Q3 to 2021 Q3, people are using it as a main job. Initially, it started as a community open source contribution with few factors. Now it's becoming like the main job. If you see companies like BMW, Alibaba, they all have started adopting Flutter. Internally, they started migrating all their apps to Flutter. And also we have, I think personally as a developer, it is not just necessary to learn the syntax, functionality, finish your app and you're done for the day. No. As a developer, you also need to understand how your framework kind of functions in the market, because your client would kind of come up and propose you a project asking, okay, Kamal, I have a project. So what do you think? Which tech stack should I use? Why do you think should I use? So as a developer or an architect or a program manager, you should be in a position to answer this question saying, you know what, I think Flutter is the future, and for so reason. Well, Flutter has these downsides, but definitely if you look at the upsides, these are the reason. So that is where you stand out different from a developer, rather than just, if you're good at syntax, I can learn syntax in a week or so, but that's not what we're looking for. People are looking for these kind of latest updates, knowing how your framework functions in the market, getting yourself updated with the releases, and updating your project also with the new releases. Because I see people working still with the old calendar, even though the release has updated with the new, they are not trying it out because they don't keep themselves updated with the new updates. So it is always necessary to keep yourself updated, no matter which technology it is, not Flutter, anything else also. Look for releases, look how your framework is functioning when compared to its competitors. And we had a couple of weeks a new release. As I told you, Dartpad is one of the online editors. So Firebase is also being integrated. So you don't have to do any special downloads. Just get into this Dartpad website, and with few settings, you can set up a backend database also, and you can start working on it. So that is how easy things are getting with Flutter with the open source request. And the setup is also pretty straightforward. Android, iOS, Linux, web, Windows. You can see the number of likes. You can see the README, how to use it. And also on the top, bottom right corner, you can see that repository. Now, why am I emphasizing so much on the repository is, you can click on that link and find out how this library was built from start to beginning. I mean, from start to end, because this is open source. And if you find a bug in it, or if you want to add a feature into it, you can add it. So that is how it's open source and developed, and you're free to use it. And if you think you want to add something to it, definitely you can go and create your own package also. So keeping all these packages, I have built this. So if I had to build something like this, a flip card, it would take hours together for me to build something. But since it was developed by another developer, I could use this package, come up with my own innovative ideas, and I could use it. And similarly, the slider, the star that you see, as and when I slide, the star keeps glowing, and you can see all the rating also kind of increasing. So this is also one kind of packages that I've integrated and combined it actually. And then moving on, these are a couple of more examples where I have used like the clone of the Google Play and another app. It's like a taxi app with 2 tabs, services and favorite. Now, why am I showing all this is, I could use a lot of plugins and packages which was available open source, and I can visualize Flutter in such a way that it's like a layered architecture, and I was able to do it. So that is how easy Flutter is to interpret and build it. So if you ask me how do I join and all that, we have a community called Flutterista. So if you're a woman or a non-binary who thinks your interest towards Flutter SDK, just let me know, or Sneha or the Git team will leave all my social handles. You can get in touch there and I'll help you connected with the community where we discuss about Flutter projects, anything as such related to Flutter. So it's not only for the women or non-binary, we have Flutter meetup in every city happening. We have Flutter Reddit, Hump Day Q&A, where we have global Flutter developers in and around discussing about Flutter issues, a topic of concern, projects, anything that you would like to discuss related to Flutter, you have there. So you can get connected to all this if you reach out to me or just connect to me on any of the social handles. I'll help you get connected to all these forum. And then I have something called HarmonyOS. So I started my journey with Flutter and then I kind of moved into HarmonyOS, where HarmonyOS being one of the innovative distributed operating system for a fully connected world. So it is like, unlike the legacy operating system, it runs on a standalone device. So it's built for the distributed architecture, and at the same time, it has a set of system capability to adapt to a wide range of array of devices. So let me repeat that. I can connect to wide array of devices, ranging from phone, tablets, wearables, smart TV, and head units. So this is another part of my career where I have started exploring and building the open source community for HarmonyOS. So the mission states very simple. So to cite you with an example, initially we used to have just two devices. One was laptop, another was mobile. And then as and when things grew up, it kind of increased. We had mobile, watch, tablet. And then we had laptop also. Then it kind of grew up. It is like laptop, mobile, watch, and AirPods. Now you can see that it's been increasing. So it's been predicted that 2025, a person would have on an average 9 devices connected to him. So apart from the one mentioned, he would have a drone, speaker, car appliances, many more. So that's how it is rapidly growing. So we need an environment that is fully connected, intelligent enough to check if my ongoing investment is kind of connected or not, right? I'm looking for that kind of an investment. Now, why am I talking about it is because, say for example, to cite you with an example, I'm in my bedroom listening to a song on an earpod, and I kind of come to the living room, even though I have a good amplifying speakers in my home theater system, it still plays on my earpod. So that means the ecosystem has something wrong, right? So HarmonyOS, what it's going to do is, the moment you come to your living room, it's going to check for all the devices and play from a better quality device. And the moment I switch from my house and I kind of hop inside the car, it should play from my dashboard, from where it kind of stopped. And the moment I reach the office or a coffee shop, it should start resuming the music again on my earpod. So that is the kind of ecosystem that we are looking for and Harmony is going to give us. So the current era is like for every product, every device, you have an operating system. So if I think about phones, I have one operating system. If I think about my watch, I have another operating system. So then the entire system kind of gets complicated, right? So that is where we have this new era of HarmonyOS into existence. So welcome to HarmonyOS. It's the world's most advanced operating system from next generation of smartphones and IoT application. The goal of HarmonyOS is to bring a truly engaging, diverse experience, okay? And we want to invite all the developers around the world to join this and build this new ecosystem. So I have one operating system kind of managing all my devices. So the image itself speaks for it. And also we have this ecosystem built in HarmonyOS, which is the 1 plus 8 plus N. So the 1 is the yellow circle, which kind of talks about the most frequently used device, which is your phone, smartphone, and which is used on a daily basis. And 8 refers to the inner circle, which is the non-smartphones, like the products like the wearables, headphone, PC, tablet, speakers, AR and VR glasses. And the N represents the IoT devices like the printer, games, consoles, smart travel, sport health, anything. So by using this strategy, we kind of enable interconnection, interoperability, and the capability of sharing all the devices in all scenarios. And that's the reason we have HarmonyOS. Now, if you think about the example that I was talking about, where I play a music from my living room, bedroom, so this ecosystem is what HarmonyOS is going to follow. And last but not least, we need a better connected world. You can see the architecture, just giving you a gist of it. Now, the architecture in the top, which is like the squares, it's like a visual representation. It kind of fits in all the devices. You can see how it kind of fits, right? So, to achieve this, we need a very fair ecosystem. And that's why we can achieve this with HarmonyOS, with a fully connected, all scenario intelligent ecosystem. And that's possible with HarmonyOS to achieve this. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. I think today you must have got a notion as to how, or a pinch as to how open source is all about, and how it's going to be the future, and how companies have started adopting it, and how you should look for one, build your skill. Forget if it's Flutter, HarmonyOS, Fuchsia, tomorrow, or XYZ, any technology, open source is going to be the future. Try developing skills around it, or any other stack that you think is your future. You think you can invest your career in it. Try working on it. Give it a try and see how it works. Thank you.
So the first question that we have is that how to navigate a very large project. So I think this is in terms of open source. So when you just go, it's overwhelming, and how do you navigate through a project like that?
That's a very interesting question. So what I would do is first actually go through the GitHub README document, understand what this project is. Does it really suits your genre? Is it something that will really interest you? Is it on a long go? If a project does not have README, do not go ahead with that project. Second thing, look at the open issues and the closed issues and how issues are getting fixed, what it is. Third one, look for the wiki section where you get more details about the project. So if you think you can go through all this, learning a tech stack or understanding what is it, that will be a later part of it. So I would suggest try starting navigating to these three sections, and then if you find any releases, look into it and then start dwelling into it. That is the approach that I would take.
So another question that we have is about your journey. So you have over 12 years of experience. So how did you like move from this position of like a contributor in open source to finally getting to a point where you're working with all these communities and managing so many people, directing them towards working in open source projects themselves?
Okay, so first I started with web, then I moved into mobile, and then I moved into cross-platform, now operating system. So one thing what I do is I don't stick to a particular technology and I'm like for a decade with that technology. No, I explore it at a faster rate, understand what it is, and at the same time I also find who are the competitors and what could the future be with this, because it's not going to settle down with this. Because if everybody thought Android was that's it, we wouldn't have thought about Flutter. Now if everybody had thought okay, Flutter is the one, now nobody would think about HarmonyOS, which is like connecting all your 1+8+n devices. I'm able to connect that. So always keep thinking what would be the next in future. So you got to think in terms of the future in terms of tech. So that's how I keep myself prepped. And I think now being everything open source, it's all about building communities and adopting it. So that's how I went through and I've come till here.
Do you have any tips that you want to share for community building? That is another question posed by the audience.
Okay, community building. I would say first try to be a part of a community. Go talk to people first, understand what they're really doing in a community. It is just attending a session? No, that's not community building. Or is it just networking? No, it's not. It's more than that, because there are a lot of factors involved in it. So first get into a community, try to see what they are doing, talk to them, whether in terms of code or arranging a conference or a live coding webinar or doing anything as such, documentation or writing books. There are so many fields you can explore. So get into any of the community of your choice and then explore it. That is what my tip would be.
And that's all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Looking forward to it. Bye.